Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 19th of April, 2024. And I'm your host, Abdul Akbar, back for another series of Friday Night Live after our Ramadan recess. So welcome to all of you for tonight's program. Of course, Friday Night Live is returning to the airwaves near you, and we're beaming out to the good people of Luton and surrounding areas tonight, and also to the good people of Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, Peterborough and the Midlands through our partner stations across the nation. And soon we're probably even going to be going out to Manchester. So if you're in Manchester or know anybody in Manchester that loves a little bit of current affairs, they will be enjoying the fact that we will be broadcasting out to Manchester in the very near future as well. But welcome to all of you, and I hope you've had a very productive Ramadan and an enjoyable Eid a week or so ago. But tonight's program and in the future, we're going to be going back to the current affairs of the nation and those affected by what's going on around the world. Most notably tonight, we are going to be talking about and asking the question, was it fair game for Iran to retaliate for the attack on its consulate in Damascus in Syria? And obviously tonight and today, we've been hearing the news that Israel actually did strike Iran back for that retaliation. But actually, my argument is that Israel started it. Israel actually attacked Iran first. Iran had to show some kind of defiance and then replied to that attack. And now Israel is retaliating and claiming to be retaliating, but actually it's not. Israel started it. What say you? 01582 481 822. This is a program about you and for you, and I'd love to hear your opinions about the current conflict that we're seeing stemming up. Is it inflaming, or is it actually getting better? And do we see things calming down after the tensions have arisen? Do they really want to have a war, these two parties, Israel and Iran? Or maybe the countries that are against Iran would rather have a war with them in order to neutralize them, and namely neutralize that nuclear threat. What say you? 01582 481 822. And of course, joining me in the studio tonight for this very special program after our Ramadan recess, I'm joined by a barrister who's also on the show tonight, Brother Saiful Islam. Assalamu alaikum, Saiful Saab. Thank you for joining tonight's program. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very well.
How was your Ramadan recess?
Alhamdulillah, beautiful.
Yeah.
I was in Mecca doing Umrah for the first couple of weeks, and it
was nice.
The best Ramadan ever. Alhamdulillah.
So you were one of the lucky few that got to go to the Holy Land.
Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah, mashallah. And if you did manage to go to Makkah and Mukarramah, then of course you are especially blessed. And for those of you who didn't, I got to say, it was one of the most beautiful Ramadans, at least in Luton, that I experienced. It was lovely. Got my chance to do my Salat al-Taraweehs in various mosques, but mostly at the Luton Islamic Center in Bury Park. But I know all the mosques were doing a wonderful job, an excellent job throughout the course of the holy month. So wherever you were, wherever you got a chance to pray and enjoy those special spiritual nights, I hope they were productive for you. But I do want to go back to this program and this topic. And Brother Saiful, I've got to say that I've been slightly perplexed seeing this tit for tat, going on between Iran and Israel. And this isn't something new. It's been transpiring for decades between these countries.
Absolutely.
But what's really frustrating is that what gives Israel the right to go and bomb an Israeli consulate, a sovereign consulate, albeit in Syria, in Damascus, and then when Iran retaliates, there's some kind of issue. And now, obviously, we've seen Israel retaliate back from what Iran has done.
Yes.
I mean, what do you make of this situation? I'm going to go to our guests on the line as well, because we have got some very special guests, and we're going to hear their perspectives as well. But what goes through your mind when you hear and see this information on the news?
There is only one word to describe what's been happening, especially from the side of the Israelis, is irrationality. I believe that obviously, in light of the views expressed by many experts in the area, in the region, there seems to be an effort to try and get everybody involved in this. And so, yes, it is irrational. And later on, when I get the chance, inshallah, I would like to use a legal analogy to basically
Oh,
deal
legal
with this,
analogy.
inshallah.
Wait, well,
Inshallah.
there has to be a legal analogy. We've got a barrister in the studio.
Well, no. Well, if you like, I can,
Yeah.
I can do that now.
Maybe in a moment.
Yeah, sure,
Let's draw on that in a moment, because I'd
Sure.
love to hear your insights on this. And
Sure.
obviously, it's a domain that you are familiar with as well, and it's something that we can benefit from as well. So hold that thought, Saiful Islam Slab. But I want to go to some of the guests we've got on the line, and we are very lucky to be joined by a number of different guests. Of course, we've got Syed Razvi Saab, who's joining us, no stranger to this program. He'll be sharing his views in a moment. And Syed Razvi is a political analyst who likes to share his views on this program. We're going to be going to him in a moment. We've also joined by Mirzaya Hashemi, who's an American journalist and documentary filmmaker actually living in Iran right now. And we're going to be going live to her in a moment. And also, we're going to be going to Noor Dahri, who's on the line as well. She's an executive director of Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism, which is a UK-based think tank. So first of all, good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us live on the radio here in the UK. Let me start off with Noor Dahri, if I may, who's an executive director of Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism. Noor, good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me. Wonderful. Your sound is a little bit on the low side, so hopefully we can get the volume up as high as possible on our side. But Noor, what's your analysis on what's going on between Israel and Iran? And was Iran's response to Israel's effective assassination of, an Iranian diplomat fair game? Like, was Iran's response fair game?
Well, this conflict is ongoing on for, officially last few years. You have seen these there are attacks in Israel, in Syria, in Lebanon, as well as assassination of the Iranian scientists inside Iran. So the conflict is going on for years. Okay, the recent war after 7th October, the massacre happened in Israel. And we knew it that it will go further, because Hamas is an Iranian militia, and the organization is on the Iranian payroll, and definitely Iran is behind these old militias against Israel inside Gaza and Palestinian authorities, West Bank, which has PIJ and Hamas. So actually, the strike which I can see is not against the target was not a diplomat. The target was IRGC generals, which are IRGC considered as a terrorist organization by the US as well as by the Israel. So
But what gives Noor, just help me understand here, what gives Israel the right to go on to sovereign soil, not its own soil, but somebody else's soil? We're talking about Syrian soil here, onto a consulate and actually assassinate anyone, whether they are illegal or not, based on somebody's description. What gives Israel the right to do that? Just help me understand that, if you don't mind.
Well, these strikes are ongoing on for years in Syria as well in Lebanon. This is not the first time. And if you look at the Iraqi a few years back, American forces have targeted successfully the Qasem Soleimani. Okay, and Qasem Soleimani was considered as a terrorist by the US. So, which means the US, even the US strike against Iranian targets in Syria or in Iraq, they are, according to them, they are legitimate target for them. Whether US or whether Israel target, because for them, IRGC journals, they are a terrorist entity. And
okay, well, hold that thought there, Noor, because one thing I don't understand about what you're saying, and I appreciate your perspective and you're sharing that angle, but I just still don't understand what gives Israel the right to go and do that on foreign soil. It's a bit like what gives Israel the right to go and have the response it did to the Hamas attacks of October the 7th. I mean, if you look at the disproportionality of what Hamas did was wrong, and everybody who is sane and normal will accept that what Hamas did on Israeli soil was absolutely wrong. But also a sane person will understand, and I'm not defending Hamas for a microsecond here, but a sane person will understand that Hamas was reacting to action that the Palestinian people had been put under, ineffectiveness, an open prison for decades. So I find it very hard to listen to the narrative that says that suddenly Israel's on the back foot and everyone's attacking Israel and Israel's in this. And even today, I would love to know what your thoughts are when even America is warning Israel once again, saying, don't go into Rafah. Don't go into Rafah. We won't support you. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Why isn't Israel even listening to its closest ally? It, to me, seems like, some have described Israel like a dog that's off its leash and completely out of control. I mean, that's one way some people have described Israel. But why isn't Israel even listening to its closest allies? Something's not right here, surely.
Well, I think what I believe that Israel is protecting their citizens and the country from the terrorist attacks, whether they come from Lebanon or come from Syria. These all are Iranian militias present in Syria, in Lebanon. Whoever attacks Lebanon on Syria against Israel, Israel has a democratic right to carry on a surgical strike in Lebanon and Syria against the terrorist entities.
Okay, let me take that. Thanks for that. Let me take that to Saif al-Islam. Saif al-Islam, thank you. No, Dari, I'm going to go to my guest in a moment. Saif al-Islam, Israel has a democratic right to protect its citizens from, parties that want to attack its soil and eradicate it. What say you?
Well, everybody has a right to defend, but obviously any form of defense has to be proportionate, doesn't it? The thing is, I suppose the question you posed earlier was Iran's retaliation to Israel, is that fair game? And what I wanted to use was this. Everybody knows that the concept of self-defense exists. So it is the most reasonable thing to do. It is any reasonable human being or a state would do. It's not to do with only their dignity, but it's also their sovereignty, also deterrence. If they aren't to respond in a certain way, then they will be taken.
You're opening the floodgates for more attacks, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the analogy I wanted to use earlier was that, I'll give you an example. In English law, if a property was to be owned legally by two people, and one of them said, well, actually, the beneficial share, all of it belongs to me, but you're only sharing the ownership on paper only. If that assertion is made, then the person who makes the assertion, the onus is on that person to prove why it is that they have the 100% beneficial share. The reason I want to use that analogy is that we know that the concept of self-defense exists. Everybody has the right to it. And we can see clearly Israel has attacked an Iranian consulate, has assassinated people. The natural thing to do in those circumstances for any sovereign state is to respond, to deter, and to say this will not be tolerated. Iran has done exactly that. Not only that, they've done that, and then they said, we will not attack anymore, but we want you to know that any further steps will be dealt with properly.
Absolutely.
In those circumstances, I believe that anybody that says otherwise, the onus is on them to satisfy why it is that they say it should be different.
I mean, what the Americans are saying, and I was watching Antony Blinken's statement today live at the G7, and he America's position, as it has always been, has been to ally with Israel, and that narrative will never stop for many countries that are staunch allies with Israel, even though they may have their grievances behind the scenes. But what's interesting, in the same sentence, he was saying Israel not going to Rafah, like saying we're not going to support that because there's some 1.4 million Palestinians there, and going into Rafah is going to be a humanitarian catastrophe. These are the words being used by staunch allies of Israel. But what's really interesting is that Blinken, Americans, are basically saying that the Iranian response to the Israeli strike on the consulate was disproportionate. The irony of that. Why? Because Iran allegedly supplied or sent some 300 missiles across Israeli soil. They were not surgical strikes, but they were 300 missiles across Israel, which was unacceptable to the Americans.
But which they were successfully able to repel. The thing is, I recall an interview with David Cameron, I believe, and I think recently someone asked him the question, how would you deal with that situation, right? And I understood his response to be along the lines of, we would respond in the most vigorous way, something along those lines. Now, I want to understand the difference between the most vigorous way and 300 missiles. I would like to know the difference.
Absolutely. It is a bit ambiguous there. I mean, everyone's definition of vigorous is going to vary depending on capability, the initial attack on them, and a lot of other things in the context. So thank you for that. That's Saiful Islam in the studio there, barrister, but also I've got some other guests on the line. So let me go straight to Marzaya Hashmi, who's been waiting patiently in Iran. She's an American journalist. Assalamu alaikum, Marzaya. Thanks for joining us live on the radio. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much. Very good.
So Marzaya, you are on the ground in Iran, and I would love to hear your reactions and the reactions of the Iranian people for what's going on. What's the word on the street over there?
Sure. I'd like to start off because your previous guest said some very interesting things. First of all, I want to say that Article 51 of the UN Charter actually gives the right to sovereign nations, once they've been attacked, to deal with aggression. And if we look at the way that Iran dealt with this is after so many different attacks that Iran has shown a lot of patience. But this last attack on its consulate was something that Iran had to respond to. And Iran, they may say that it was disproportionate, but it was extremely calculated, and targets that were hit, extremely calculated. And Iran never would target hospitals or residential areas or civilians in general. And let us remember that they were told in advance, they told the Americans when this was going to happen. They wanted to make sure that, one, it was a message of deterrence, but two, that it wouldn't be taken out of context and that Iran wants war, because Iran never did want war. However, at the same time, it's a message that if the Israeli entity, the Zionist entity, wants to start a war, Iran is quite capable, very capable of defending itself. So this was a deterrence message. The word on the street here, I can tell you that Iranians are happy. Iranians were actually during I think it was 10 days or so after the consulate hit, the hit on the Iranian consulate before Iran responded. A lot of the Iranians were calling, come on, we have to respond. When is the response going to come? So the Iranians were very happy that this has taken place. And it's so ironic, the irony of it all, when we're in the middle of a genocide in Gaza with this entity having killed 35,000, probably at least 40,000, if we count the bodies under the debris, and to talk about the Americans supporting this entity and to talk about being disproportionate. I mean, it is so ironic. It would be comical if it wasn't so tragic of what we're looking at in Gaza on a day-to-day basis. The Iranians support. They definitely support what the government
sorry, let me ask you. Sorry to interrupt you, but let me ask you this question about the current retaliation that we've been hearing about today and this morning in the West, the Israeli retaliation to the Iranian strikes. My understanding from the Western media, and I'm talking about BBC, Sky News, CNN, etc., and newspapers like The Telegraph, they're reporting that actually local Iranian press are playing this down. And that is an indicator that they don't want an escalation. You know, everyone's had their say. They've shown their firepower on each side, and everybody just wants to relax now. And that's effectively what the Americans are asking for, and the British are asking for as well, which is, okay, you've had your fight, guys. You've shown that you both are not going to tolerate each other's aggressions, and now will you just stop? I mean, what's the Iranian media reporting right now to its people?
Right. What it has reported today was that many quadcopters actually over or near the city of Isfahan, and anti-missile batteries shot them down. And I mean, people immediately, people in Isfahan were out and went to the area. Some of them 6 a.m, because I believe this happened around 5, if I'm not mistaken. We have the first videos that I have seen was 5:30 or 6 in the morning from individuals in that area. Listen, I mean, in Iran, it's calm. You see, there's a big difference between the mentality of Iranians and the mentality of Israelis. When the Israelis were waiting and wondering if the Iranians were attacked, we saw a lot of the settler colonials heading out of, trying to get out from the airport. The Iranians are living their day to day and not afraid. I mean, no one wants war, of course. But at the same time, they knew that the government, the military, had no choice but to actually deal with this attack in a deterrent way. Otherwise, the Israelis would just be worse and worse and up the ante. And this is a country that have dealt with a lot of Israeli attacks, killing their nuclear scientists, various different cyber attacks. So there had to be a red line drawn to say enough is enough. And yes, no, Iran was never after war. However, the Israeli regime from the very beginning of this genocide on the Palestinians had started, and they wanted the Iranians to get involved. Why? Because they want the American support. They want to draw the United States into a war because they can only what they have done in Gaza. Obviously, there's nothing militarily that they have done. They've killed women and kids. Well, wow, what a fantastic military that you can do that. It doesn't take a whole lot. And this is a sad part, that we should concentrate on the main issue, and is the continuation of a genocide for 6.5 months. Where's international law?
Thank you for that analysis. We appreciate that, Mirza Hashmi, American journalist based out of Iran right now. Let me go to Saeed Razvi Saab, who's been listening to the comments from Noor Dahri and also Mirza Hashmi. Saeed Razvi, what's your analysis on what's going on, if I may, very quickly? Because some are saying that Iran has a nuclear weapons ambition, and some of this is actually about ensuring that Iran does not develop that capability, because obviously that would be a natural threat, not just to Israel in the region, but to Saudi Arabia and to the Arab and Gulf countries as well. Do you think there's a little bit of that behind the scenes going on there?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you for inviting me over. I think your question is quite interesting, because we have to look at the concept of this nuclear energy that they keep on pumping onto Iran and its politics. I think what's really interesting is Iran has never, ever aspired to create a nuclear weapon. It has always said that we want to have this nuclear facilities to develop our energy. I mean, there's a statement from Imam Khamenei in one of his lectures. He says that, if we fall into the same situation as the oil, then once the oil finishes, then we will have to beg the Western powers for our energy. So that's a very important aspect of understanding what the nuclear facilities are, or at least what Iran intends of it. And then you have to also look at the economy of that Middle East, or West Asia, as again it has always been referred to. Iran never mentions this area as Middle East, because when you say Middle East, you're Middle East of somebody who's in the West. That's why Iran always calls itself West Asia. So it doesn't articulate or acknowledge the fact that it's in the Middle East. So that's in brackets anyway, the conversation. It's a lot more wider in geopolitics terms. But Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei himself has said that we consider atomic weapons as a disastrous weapon or equipment for destroying the whole human race. And when you look at proportionality in relation to nuclear weapons, and when Lord Cameron says that we would have attacked, one person's 10 or 100 missiles is equal to one nuclear bomb. England can easily drop a nuclear bomb on a country which has attacked its embassy. So
I hear that. Stay on the line there. I'm going to come back to you in a moment after the break. But listeners, this is Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam. And we are talking about the situation between Israel and Iran. We've got some wonderful guests on the line. We've got Noor Dahri, we've got Mirza Hashmi, and also Saeed Razvi on the line as well, giving their analysis. We're going to be continuing this after the break. So stay tuned. Friday Night Live. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
A large and elegant wedding and events venue in the heart of Luton, catering for up to 1,200 guests, with a 5-star food hygiene rating, plenty of parking, bridal suite, family rooms and prayer facilities. Crescent Hall's the perfect venue for your wedding, events, parties and conferences. We have some great offers for summer. Contact us to find out more. Call 01582 723386. Email bookings@crescenthall.co.uk or search for us online and social media. Crescent Hall, Luton. Conditions apply.
आइडियल प्रॉपर्टीज 20 साल से आपकी खिदमत में पेश आपकी प्रॉपर्टी की सारी जिम्मेदारी अब हमारी। हम अच्छी तरह से जांच पड़ताल करके किराएदार डालते हैं और आपको किराया बर वक्त गारंटी के साथ दिलवाते हैं। अगर आप प्रॉपर्टी किराए पर लेने या फरोख्त करने का सोच रहे हैं तो आज ही हमारे तजुर्बाकार माहिरीन से राब्ता कीजिए 01582 721110 या फिर 01582 696050। आइडियल प्रॉपर्टीज, आपकी मदद हमारा एन फरीजा।
Assalamu alaikum. Abu Ayyub reported the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever fasts the month of Ramadan and then follows it with 6 days of fasting in Shawwal, it will be as if he has fasted the entire year. This is narrated in Sahih Muslim. May Allah accept our good deeds, forgive our sins and make us people of Jannah. Please join Inspire FM from Monday 15th to Saturday 21st for 6 days of the Shawwal fasting broadcast. Join Brother Tariq at 4 a.m. for the Sehri show and Brother Rashid at 7:30 p.m. for the Iftari show.
AK Windows South Limited, manufacturers and installers of high-quality UPVC windows and doors, bifold doors, composite doors, conservatories, porches, skypods, fascias, guttering, and much, much more. We specialize in double glazing and triple glazing using the best German profile. If you want quality at affordable prices, AK Windows is the place to go. If your house needs a facelift, you know who to trust. For a free quote, call AK Windows today on 01582 483 777 or visit us at Unit 10E, Britannia Estate, Leagrave Road, Luton.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من يحرم الرفق يحرم الخير. That whoever is deprived of gentleness is deprived of good.
Did you know that over 361,000 children die every year due to lack of clean water? Clean water is not a luxury, but a basic human right. UKIM is working to end their suffering. By providing clean and safe water, make a difference. Provide clean and safe water with UKIM. For donations, call now or visit ukim.org.
1 in 4 people suffer from mental health issues.
But in our community, it's a taboo.
लोग क्या कहेंगे?
ये तो साड़ी बेइज्जती है.
Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishing me?
क्या मेरे पर किसी ने जादू कर दिया है?
Let's break down some barriers and start talking about it.
Join us on Mindful Moments on Fridays at 5 p.m. to learn about how we can support our mental well-being.
Mindful Moments. Let's give our minds the attention it deserves.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to part 2 of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam Saab. We are dealing with a really interesting topic tonight, listeners. And of course, we're talking about the situation and the tensions between Iran and Israel. But that's not all what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be moving on to another topic in a bit, because I'm asking the question, are we heading towards World War III? I don't know about you, but just for some reason, I just feel that the world is on edge. I don't know why I'm feeling that. Maybe I do. Maybe you can help me decipher this. And Saiful Islam Saab, maybe you can help me decipher this as well. But I just feel like the world is in a state of play with all the things that are going on around us. Not just withstanding Iran and Israel, but Israel and Gaza, I'm talking about the fact that just simple logical things are being debated now. So, for example, I can't believe we're having the debate asking the question, what defines a man and what defines a woman? I can't believe that, certain systems in our country here in the UK have changed. Like, for example, some institutions that we hold sacred around our religious beliefs, for example. I can't believe these things are happening, and I just feel like everyone's on edge. It doesn't. I don't think it will take a lot for things to start up. I forgot to mention Ukraine and Russia and the conflict there. There's ongoing conflicts happening all around the world. I don't want to paint a picture of doom and gloom, listeners, but I just feel like something is brewing, and I really hope it doesn't brew to the point where it spills over and the pressure pot blows open.
I agree.
I hope that doesn't happen, right? But it's a scary thought, and I really don't want that to happen. But we're going to be asking that question: are we heading towards a new world war? Listeners, what do you reckon? 01582 481822. I'll be talking about that, but also, I don't know about you, but did you see those videos on WhatsApp of young people fighting after Salatul Taraweeh in Ramadan? I don't know about you, but I did. And of course, they were forwarded on WhatsApp and on social media. And I was just scratching my head, and I asked myself the question, number one, what am I doing about it? But most importantly, what are we doing about it as a community? Because if young people looking beautiful, by the way, these are beautiful young men wearing thobes, right? They're wearing thobes. They're wearing the Islamic dress, but they're fighting each other like hooligans, like football hooligans, outside not a football stadium or outside a sports center, but outside a mosque on a holy night. And you're asking yourself the question, what the heck's going on here? What are we doing? What's going on with our youth? And I'm not talking about youth in general. I'm talking about the Muslim youth in Muslim areas that are coming out for quote unquote prayer, but actually fighting each other, and dare I say, getting machetes out on each other and trying to kill each other. This is just, that did not come. That was my dampener in Ramadan, if there was a dampener. I mean, I don't know what went through your mind, Saiful Islam Sahab, but what goes through your mind? We'll talk about that as well and get your reactions on that as well. But I want to go back to the Iran topic and quickly get some final reactions from my guests on the line. And just to remind everyone who is on the line right now, we're delighted to be joined by Noor Dahri, who's an executive director of Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism, which is a UK-based think tank. He's on the line. We've also got Marziah Hashemi, American journalist and documentary filmmaker living in Iran. She's live in Iran right now. And we've also got Sayed Taqi Rizvi, who's a political analyst. So thank you to all of you for holding on to the program and staying with us. But I want to go straight to get final remarks from Noor Dahri. Noor Dahri, are you there? Assalamu alaikum. Are you still there?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you for staying on the line, Noor, and we appreciate your time. And you've got a really interesting angle, and I don't think, if I may say, many people will necessarily agree with your angle because of the actions of Israel and the disproportionality that it's exacerbated on the Palestinian people in response to the Hamas, some would argue, terrorist attacks on Israel. And nobody here on this line, I'm sure, will say that what Hamas did was good or was something that was the right thing to do to kill any kind of human life, notwithstanding Israeli life. However, would you agree with me, Noor, that Israel's response to the Hamas attacks on Israel are and were disproportionate? Would you agree with me on that?
Well, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Okay, they don't care about their own people. Their manifesto is to eliminate.
How would you define? Sorry to interrupt you, but how would you define a terrorist organization? Just help me understand that, if you don't mind.
They are targeting civilians. Their motive is to target Israeli civilians, Jewish lives in Israel. They are
But
targeting.
what about Israel though? Israel's also killed some, according to the Americans, not the authority in Gaza, but according to the Americans, there's some 30 to 35,000 deaths of civilians also in Gaza. So by your definition, it could be argued that Israel is also a terrorist organization. Then Israeli government, I'm talking about.
Israel is not a terrorist state. No one declares Israel as a terrorist state. Just individual people are declaring a state. A state cannot be a terrorist state unless they support finance terrorist organizations like Iran does, right? And that figure is 35,000. The figure is a Hamas figure. It's not Israeli figure. No,
that's not true. Let me correct that. Yeah, no, that's not correct, because the Americans have used that figure in the United Nations. I want to be clear about that, because a lot of people just give me a second. A lot of people say that actually that 30,000 number is coming from the Hamas Health Authority. That's correct, but you need to accept, Noor Dahri, that this number, according to NGOs, everyone, including the UK government, including the American government, including member states of the United Nations, have said that the Hamas numbers, normally when they give numbers about their casualty rates, are actually accurate.
What about Hamas casualties? Why they don't count Hamas casualties in these numbers?
I don't know about that, but what I do know is that the Americans have also quoted 30,000, 35,000 casualties.
Yeah, my friend, that's why I'm saying they don't count Hamas casualties. They everyone consider Hamas is fighting in civilian clothes. They are dying in civilian clothes, and they are showing to people, to the world, the civilians are killed. Yes, I understand. In every war, civilian lives are in danger. Civilian lives are harmed. Civilian people are getting killed by unintentionally, which I understand, and I very sympathize to my Muslim brother sister in Palestine, in Gaza. I understand that, but the thing is people need to understand that Gaza was run by the Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, for the last 17 years, right? And any consequence that comes, obviously, these innocent people are obviously getting hurt. But the figure, Israel is always trying its best to minimize a civilian casualties. This is why they are dropping leaflets announcing and moving millions of people from north to the central, and then from central to the south. This is why the proportionate of the figure of the civilians are very less, according to the Israeli spokesperson. Hamas is giving the only one figure, 30,000, 33,000, 35,000, but they are not including their figure. There are 24 battalions. They were to get trained, and they were stay in Gaza. 24 battalions. Out of the 4 battalions which are now in Rafah, and 2 are nearly in the Nusayrat with central Israel, and they are soon to be eliminated. 20 battalions of Hamas terrorist organization have successfully been eliminated by the IDF.
That's your opinion, and I appreciate that opinion. But no, let me ask you this question. That's your opinion, and we're going to have to agree to disagree. But I don't agree with your opinion on that analysis. But that's okay. We can agree to disagree, because we're civilized people, and that's how civilized people talk to each other. But let me ask you this next question, which is another question that's top of mind for many people, which is, was it right for Israel to target those aid convoys that were delivering food to ordinary Palestinian civilians? We're not talking about Hamas, but for Israel to target, and anyone who looked at that, including military experts, said they looked like surgical strikes. Was that the right thing for Israel to do?
No, it was not right. Israel admitted it and said yes, it was their mistake, and they have taken action against those who were responsible in the IDF for this strike. And as well, Israel said, and they make sure that such type of inhuman action not repeated again.
But my concern, yes.
With your permission, Brother Abdul Akbar, may I just ask a question of Brother Noor?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes,
because I know you invited him, and he's a guest, and I don't know his background, but I see no neutrality or analysis in his comments, and I'm just wondering if Brother Noor is here as a representative of IDF or Israel. Just wanted to be clear.
No, what would you say to that question? Legitimate question.
Well, I don't represent IDF. Neither you represent the brother doesn't represent Hamas. I don't represent IDF. I'm just answering the facts. Simple.
The reason I asked that question is because obviously a person who is trying to say the truth as it is would concede where concessions need to be made. But I can see a situation where even where clear facts are presented to Brother Noor, he's not prepared to make concessions. As we would do in a courtroom, defend our client vigorously, regardless of whether they're wrong or not. And that's the picture, that's the impression I'm getting from Brother Noor, and I'm quite disappointed with that.
Thank you for sharing that. What's your reaction to that? Yeah.
Brother, I'm just telling you the figure that these 35,000 figure is coming from the Hamas, and no one will accept that, and they don't include the Hamas casualty in it. Simple.
No, we need to be clear. We need to be clear about that, because that number actually, no, you need to correct yourself on that, and I need to correct it for the record. But this number has been accepted worldwide by all major Western governments, including the United Nations. Do you accept that, sir?
The US didn't accept this figure. UK didn't.
They have. They've quoted it. The U.S. ambassador herself. The U.S. ambassador herself has used that number. Antony Blinken has used that number in his own statements. I know this. I read it personally. The U.S. has personally, I'm talking about the Americans, staunch allies of Israel, have reiterated this number, 30,000 plus, a number of times. So for you to dispute that and say it's a Hamas number, I think discredits a lot of what you're saying, sir.
Well, Hamas numbers are not included. So where the Hamas numbers are, because IDF said the more than 50,000 Hamas terrorists have been eliminated. Where they are now, where their figures are.
Okay, hold the line there. Saif Islam.
Just one more question for Brother Noor.
Sure.
Brother Noor, you heard Brother Abdul Akbar say at the beginning that what Hamas did on the 7th of October was wrong. And to me, that is sincerity. My question to you is, in your view, has Israel done anything wrong? And if so, what is it?
Well, Israel exactly did what UK did in Iraq with the US, and what the US did against the Taliban terrorists. They went after these terrorists who caused great human damage.
No. The question is, in your view, has Israel done anything wrong?
Israel has absolute right to go after the terrorists.
So you don't think he's done anything wrong? They have done anything wrong, no?
Their operation is against Hamas, not Palestinians.
You don't think Israel has done anything wrong at all?
Well, every army does mistakes in war. So is Israel.
Aside from mistakes, you think Israel has done everything right. Is that your position?
Well, every army does mistakes in a war. So does Israel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that, Noor, but I think there's a principle of proportionality, and I think there's a principle of being fair and reasonable. And again, this is no disrespect to anybody listening to tonight's program, including yourself, Noor. You're a guest on this program. But when I see the casualties on the Israeli side and the power and weaponry and all the might and all of the capability that the Israelis have, and then you see the innocent Palestinians. I'm talking about the Palestinian people here. I'm not talking about Hamas. I don't care about Hamas. I'm talking about the innocent civilians of Gaza, and the fact that it has been accepted by multiple non-government organizations that Israel has stopped them from entering and supplying aid. When you hear that water supplies are being prevented from entering Gaza, when you hear that electricity is being controlled, surely you have to accept that this is not a way that you treat a people. And actually, Noor, do you accept that Palestine and Gaza is occupied? Do you accept that, sir?
Well, international community says it's occupied. Israel doesn't say.
No, I'm just saying, let's just be clear about this. I'm saying, do you personally and your organization, because you're the executive director of the Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism, the ITCT, which is a UK-based think tank, but does your organization accept, in line with international humanitarian law, that the Gaza Strip is an occupied strip by the Israelis. Do you accept that, sir? Does your think tank accept that?
Gaza run by Hamas, not Israel. Israel left Gaza 2006, sorry. And since that, Hamas run the Gaza entirely, not Israel.
No, but do you accept that land is occupied?
That's what I'm saying. Gaza is run by Hamas, not Israel.
I'm not asking you that question, sir. And what I'm asking you...
This is my answer that no, Gaza is not occupied by... Gaza is occupied by Hamas.
Okay, let me go to the West Bank in that case. If we don't want to talk about Gaza, let's go to the West Bank. Is the West Bank occupied? Are those people in the West Bank occupied by the state of Israel, sir?
Area A, 7 cities run by Palestinian Authority. No any Jew or Israeli is allowed to enter it, which means the area is fully controlled by the Palestinian administration. They have their own government.
Okay, I think it's very clear for the listeners to draw their own conclusions to this Saif al-Islam and the position, Noor, that you're saying. But for me, if you can't even accept what international law and the United Nations is saying about the occupied territories, then I'm afraid, sir, that leaves very little credibility on anything else that you've mentioned. But that's my view.
My brother, you are a host. You can't conclude the conclusion. You invite.
I can. I'm not. I'm entitled to a view. I'm entitled to a view, and that's my view.
Okay, it's up to you.
Let me just be clear. You can't say I'm a host, and therefore I'm not entitled to a view. We're having a civilized conversation here, and that's my view, sir. Pardon?
I have a political right to present my views, whether people accept or not accept.
I know, absolutely, and I appreciate you sharing your views. But let me go and thank you for sharing your views, Noor Dahri. Let me go and get the reactions from my other guests on the line as well, and I think there'll be lots of reactions coming in from a number of people as well, and we are getting messages coming in as well from our listeners on those comments from Noor Dahri, who's an executive director of Islamic Theology. Don't know about you, but that was a really interesting conversation. But let me go to Marzaya Hashmi, who is an American journalist in Iran right now and a documentary writer. Marzaya, if I may get your reactions to what you've just heard there.
It was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it's so painful, I have to say, for a Muslim to say something like that. I mean, when he talks about that, all of these 30,000, of course, he says it's Hamas numbers, and these were Hamas fighters. 70% of the casualties are women and children. I have been covering this 6.5 months every day, looking at unbelievable videos, unbelievable footage coming in of newborn babies. I mean, it is, to be honest, I'm flabbergasted. I guess this is why the Palestinians have been suffering for 75 years, because part of our Muslim Ummah really believes this. I mean, come on. We're looking at a situation. He talks about Gaza, that it's not occupied. Are you kidding me? We know that this area has been under siege. It's not that it happened on October 7th. Let us understand that. They didn't have clean water prior to that. They didn't have enough food prior to that. They could not get in building materials. It's a total open air prison. And of course, the West Bank, that we have seen hundreds of people killed since October 7th. And let me just say, and when we talk about Hamas, let us understand also international law too, that their occupied people have the right to resist. They have the right to resist, and they even have the right to armed resistance. So let us understand what we're going to do. The Palestinian people went through everything from the diplomatic efforts, political efforts, so many different summits. They were okay, we're going to go with it. The PLO were, turning their arms. They have gone through the whole thing, and we have seen their land get less and less and less, that there's nothing left. There is nothing left except resistance. And that's why it is the resistance only.
Marzaya Hashmi, I can hear the emotion in your reaction, and I appreciate your reaction to those comments made from our other panelists. Let me go to Sayyid Razvi Saab as well for his reactions as well. What do you make of the comments you heard from that anti-terrorism think tank executive director, sir?
Well, first of all, I endorse everything what Sister Merzia said. But what's so important is that it's very difficult to be a genocide apologist unless you use the statistics of the enemy. In reality, these statistics, which Mr. Noor certainly he needs to get more light into his argument and just not have his name as Noor, is the fact that these are figures from the Zionist lobby. They're not the statistics which the United Nations uses. Even Austin in one of his commission, and when he was asked how many people do you think were killed, he said 30,000. He didn't say division. The other important thing, if I may just take a moment in this, is too many people like this gentleman are very comfortable to create Shia-Sunni divides as well. And what is really done in this particular event is that for a long time, Iran has always been defending the Palestinian people. But for the first time in its active presence, it's shown that it doesn't matter if in front of you is of another denomination, as long as it's a Muslim brother or sister you're defending. And, particularly the enemy. And if
I would argue human defending. I mean, I think it's a fundamental tenet of our faith to defend all human life, whether it's Muslim or not.
What is really important, if I may quickly say this, is once the events of last Saturday took place, the Zionist representative in the United Nations presents this picture and says these Iranians don't care about any Muslims. They were about to bomb the mosque, on the temple mosque. What kind of rubbish is that? He said if we hadn't destroyed these rockets which were coming, then this mosque would have been destroyed, and the Iranians don't care about any Muslims. What rubbish is that? They've used, and the reality is Baitul Muqaddas is as important to all, of all the denominations who care about Islam and the Holy Prophet. So,
I mean, he's not here to defend himself. He disconnected, unfortunately, from the line. I don't know if we had any technical issues or not, but we are trying to get Noor Dahri from the Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism, UK-based think tank, back on the line so he can respond to some of your reactions. And if he does come back, we'll welcome him back on the program. I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but we are out of time, unfortunately, on this particular topic. But let me go ahead and thank, in absentia, Noor Dahri, whether you agree with him or not. He's the Executive Director of Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism, the ITCT, which is a UK-based think tank. We're also thanking Merzia Hashmi, an American journalist making a debut on this program and documentary and filmmaker living in Iran. Merzia, we look forward to having you back on this program in the future. Lovely to see you and speak to you. And also, Syed Razvi Saab, of course, no stranger to this program, political analyst, sharing your perspectives as well. Thank you so much. Good evening to all of you. And thank you for sharing us, listeners. This is Friday Night Live, and we're going to go back to our next topic in a moment. We're going to take a break in a couple of minutes, but Saiful Islam. Wow. I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I don't know about you, but I mean, it's interesting that those opinions exist.
Yeah, I thought he was a lawyer for Israel.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think everyone's entitled to their perspectives, but I was shocked to see and to hear this argument, especially it goes back to the point you made about fact. We got to say when fact is fact. We got to be honest and true.
Exactly.
And I just felt like the gentleman was unwilling to even accept the occupied territories.
Absolutely.
And if you can't accept the occupied territories, I'm sorry, but in my eyes, you've lost all blooming credibility.
Absolutely.
It's like saying, I'm not accepting something is colored white when it's colored white,
exactly.
or the flag is this color when it's not that color, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's almost like what Donald Trump is doing, fake news or whatever. I mean, it's really scary that we have people in our Muslim community that hold this. And you know what? I blame myself partially. What am I doing wrong to not be able to educate people like this chap?
Forgive me for using this phrase, but I remembered it from the Twins film.
Yeah,
money talks and bullshit walks.
Oh God, yeah.
I'm sorry to say
okay, yeah, we have to censor the last bit, but I mean, I think that's what's probably going past many minds right now, and there we are right now. Money talks indeed, especially if you're a think tank on a certain side. And look, at the end of the day, we are where we are. But listeners, this is Friday Night Live. There's more action coming up in the third part of tonight's program. We are going to be talking about Who are you going to vote for in the upcoming elections? When Rishi Sunak is chucked out, who comes next? Listeners, Friday Night Live, stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Hamza. Continue listening to Inspire FM 105.1 FM.
Do you have a legal problem? Are you trying to settle a family member? If so, then contact M&K Solicitors. M&K Solicitors are a leading local firm specializing in immigration, family, personal injury, clinical negligence, civil and property law. Our solicitors have over 20 years' experience and are recognized internationally. Our success rate speaks for itself. Take advantage of our free consultations for your first meeting. We also give free advice on Fridays, no appointment needed. That's right, free legal advice. M&K Solicitors. Call 01582 732 503.
How many times have you needed urgent medical supplies but don't know where to go? At Harris Pharmacy, we take pride in delivering a high-level healthcare to our community. This is why we have services such as private one-to-one consultation, free prescription ordering from GP and delivery to your home, mobility aids such as providing wheelchairs and many other items for everyday use. Call us today on free phone 0800 458 2850 to discuss your medical needs. We are open from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Harris Pharmacy, 165 A/B, Dunstable Road, Luton.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
ग्रेस्टोन सॉलिसिटर्स जो कानूनी मामला को सुलझाने, आपका हक दिलवाने, आपको हर तरह का तहफ्फुज़ फराहम करने और बेहतरीन नताइज हासिल करने में मुखलसाना हर मुमकिन कोशिश करते हैं। मसला कोई भी हो, इमिग्रेशन, एम्प्लॉयमेंट, फैमिली लॉ, पर्सनल इंजरी, मेडिकल नेग्लिजेंस, सिविल लिटिगेशन एंड हाउसिंग, इमिग्रेशन मसाइल को सुलझाने के लिए ग्रेस्टोन सॉलिसिटर्स पेश कर रहे हैं फ्री इमिग्रेशन ड्रॉप इन क्लिनिक्स हर जुमे। टेलीफोन 01582 343 453, एड्रेस 275 Dunstable Road, Luton, LU4 8BS। कानूनी मसाइल में इंसाफ के लिए आपके हम सफर।
Assalamu alaikum. Abu Ayyub reported the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever fasts the month of Ramadan then follows it with 6 days of fasting in Shawwal, it will be as if he has fasted for the entire year. This is narrated in Sahih Muslim. May Allah accept our good deeds, forgive our sins and make us people of Jannah. Please remember the oppressed in your du'as. Ameen.
Losing a loved one, especially a mother or a father, could mean losing access to safety, education and shelter. We here at Crisis Aid believe that children in the world deserve a better chance at life. Your small donation can influence a big change. Donate today. www.crisisaid.org.uk/orphan fund or call our donations line 0333 305 5000.
बचपन से सुनते आए हैं ये नहीं कहना वो नहीं करना सवाल नहीं पूछना और फिर इसी रविश से हमारे ज़हनी और माशरती मसाइल उलझते चले गए। हमारे मसाइल हमारे हालात से नहीं हमारे ख्यालात से पैदा होते हैं और ख्यालात दुरुस्त किए जा सकते हैं। मैं हूँ आज़ाद और अगर आप भी चाहते हैं कि हम सब आज़ाद हो सकें अपने ही पैदा किए हुए मसाइल से तो बात कीजिए क्योंकि अब बोल के लब आज़ाद हैं तेरे। Only on Inspire FM.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7 o'clock.
From the heart of Bedfordshire in Luton on 105.1 FM. This is Inspire FM News.
Today, Friday, 19th of April, read by Shaheen Mirza. First, the headlines. Israeli missile has struck for Iran, US officials say. No plan for immediate retaliation against Israel, senior Iranian official says after blast reported. World's biggest election kicks off as India votes. Pakistan attack targets van carrying Japanese auto workers. Labour unveils plans for new housing on Grey Belt. Rishi Sunak says he will make Commons sit and vote until it's done on Rwanda. And that concludes today's news roundup.
Always up to date with everything that's happening locally, nationally, and internationally. This is Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to part 3 of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 19th of April, 2024. I'm your host, and I'm joined by my very special co-host, Saiful Islam. He is in the studio with me as well. Of course, if you don't know Saiful Islam, he's making his debut on tonight's program. I'm delighted to have him here, covering Zafar Saab, who Zafar Saab actually, Saiful Islam Saab, is actually currently in Pakistan, of all places, enjoying the sun and the scenery of Azad Kashmir, and good for him. And I hope he's listening to the program live on the radio, or live on the internet at least, if he can get a signal in the mountains. But I'm delighted to have you here, Saiful Islam Saab. But I've got to say, just reflecting on that last segment, you know, we do have people in the community that have diverse opinions, but man, that was one opinion that I've not heard from a Muslim, at least in the current 6.5-month conflict that we've been observing in Gaza. I'm surprised that this so-called Islamic think tank has this angle. I mean, any final reactions from you before we move on to our next topic?
Well, I mean, I you know, one of the reasons I asked that question was, do you think Israel has done anything wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And for him to simply say no, indirectly, flies in the face of whatever's been happening. The world accepts Israel has done many wrong things. The world accepts that they are illegally occupying the West Bank. The world accepts so many wrong things Israel has done. But to this gentleman, there was nothing. Do we need to say any more?
No, I mean, everyone can draw their own conclusions. We have invited the brother back on the program, and one person sent a message, actually. You know, people have been affected by what we've been talking about, but listeners, we need to hear all opinions. Everyone's opinion is welcome, whether they agree with us or don't agree with us, whether they agree with you or don't. My job, I have an opinion, I'm going to share it. Brother Saiful Islam has an opinion, he's going to share it. You're welcome to share your opinions and reactions. 01582 481 822. Don't be an armchair listeners, okay? I want you to pick up the phone and share your perspectives. What you heard, is it right? Was it right for Iran to retaliate against Israel when Israel attacked its consulate in Damascus? Was it right for Iran to do that? Is this fair game? I'm asking that question. 01582 481 822. And of course, we know what's going on in Gaza. And we heard the opinion saying that actually the number of casualties, the 30,000 number, is a Hamas number, and therefore it cannot be credible or trusted. Do you accept that? Do you agree with that? 01582 481 822. I do think our other panelists, Sister Marzaya, she actually made some very good points. Wonderful journalist in Iran, speaking us live from there, and it's been really interesting. Sayyid Razvi Saab is on the line as well. Thank you, Sayyid Razvi Saab, for staying with us. We're going to go to him for his thoughts on this next topic, because I don't know about you listeners, I've got to say that, you know, we know, I mean, I can sense it, and anyone who's been around for 40 plus years, which includes me, and certainly Saiful Islam Saab, I'm not indicating you don't look young or anything like that, but we've been around for a while. I'm 43, and I'm not going to ask you your age, but you're a tenured barrister, and we know you have to be very experienced to be a barrister. And I'm amazed that you haven't aged as much as you have, Saiful Islam Saab, because of the kind of work that you do. It's probably stressful, long hours, etc., etc. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
You look great.
As you can see that I need a wig.
And then you probably wear a wig in court, right, when you're in court. But you know, what's interesting is that anyone who can read between the tea leaves, and of course that's just an expression. I don't read any tea leaves. I believe in the good Lord, and I believe in his plans, and he is the best of planners. I'm talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that said, anyone who's been around long enough will know that the Conservatives are most likely to be kicked out at the next elections. And anyone who's been following politics will know that Rishi Sunak will probably call an election towards the latter end of this year, right? So we've established that much. Here's the problem. The problem is that the alternative is Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer, as we know, is the leader of the Labour Party. Now, the problem with Sir Keir Starmer, let's show him his due respect. Sir Keir Starmer, he was knighted by the former Queen. He had a position on Palestine, which I believe also showed his true colors with respect to that conflict. And he took a very staunch, un-Labourly-like stance against the situation and Israel's atrocities, it could be argued. You know, the word that people are using, many politicians are using the word atrocities, so I'm using that word as well. And atrocities against innocent Palestinian civilians. And that worried me so much so, I mean, worried not just me, worried you and worried many others, especially, and it worried lots of Labour councillors across the UK who resigned, right? I mean, we all saw the news many months ago where they were knocking on Keir Starmer's door saying, listen, what say you? We need to be very clear about our policy. And Keir Starmer was like, I am being clear. I am not going to be calling for a humanitarian ceasefire at this time. Israel responding to the Hamas attacks is fair game. And then we saw that then morph into what they called a sustainable ceasefire. And that's the current position of not just Keir Starmer and Labour, but also the Conservative government right now. So here's the problem. We know elections are coming up, and we know they're coming up very soon. And a lot of Muslims around the UK are actually thinking, you know what? This could be an opportunity to make a protest vote. And we'll make that protest vote in the form of launching independent candidates in constituencies we think we've got a shot at actually getting an independent member of parliament into the House of Commons come end of the year. Now, I want to ask you, 01582 481 822, is that the right strategy to have a protest vote? Because let me share my perspectives and say, for Islam, I've loved your point of view on this, and we're going to go to Sayyid Razvi Saab for his perspective. Here's my problem. There are lots of activists. Around the UK, good activists, and I'm talking about members of the community that are very good at talking about the plight of the Muslims around the world, the plight of the Muslims and other communities in the UK, and how bad the government is doing in the UK, right? However, will they make viable MPs? And my worry is we're going to end up with low quality members of parliament. And people are saying, well, no, George Galloway, he's good. He speaks pro-Gaza. He's very pro-Muslim. But George Galloway really is frowned upon in the House of Commons. In fact, I would say, and some would argue, he is useless as an MP. He'll never actually drive any change because he has no party backing him and has no other authority apart from the fact he has the status of member of parliament. So, Sefas, I want to come to you for a moment on your comments, but we've got a caller on the line. Caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum, you're live on the radio. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I've just been listening to your video call regarding Iran and Gaza.
Gigi.
Yes, so first of all, there's one thing that when it comes to the Gaza situation, everybody gets very emotional about the Gaza situation, which is understandable. But you really need to understand the background of the Gaza situation. No one has questioned the role of this country in Gaza,
right?
In Palestine. So no one's questioned what was Britain's foreign policy between 1914 to 1939, which laid the foundation for Israel to be created. So I mean, I hear constant debates and constant talks, but no one has actually said why has this situation occurred.
So you're saying that actually the UK is as responsible for what's going on in Gaza right now as perpetrated by the Israeli government as the Israeli government itself. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not the perpetration. It's the policy. So the British Empire in 1914 was given a mandate to look after Palestine. Now, in that between 1914 and 1939, Britain enabled the Zionists to take control of Palestine by putting people in certain situations, in certain positions, so they can accumulate the land from the Palestinians.
Yeah, we know about the Balfour Declaration, right?
No. This is not about the Balfour Declaration.
Okay.
So the first not many people might know this, but the first colonial minister of Palestine was a Zionist supporter called Sir Samuel Herbert. He was the colonial minister for Palestine for 5 years, between 1920 and 1925. He was a pro-Zionist, and he enabled Zionist people to be in charge of certain amenities within Palestine to set the foundation for Israel.
But just help me understand, what's your point here? Why do we need to know about that history in order to make sense of what's going on now? Yeah, just help me understand that.
You need to understand that history because between 1914 and in the First World War, when the Arabs helped the British defeat the Ottomans, the British promised an independent Arab state with Palestine included. Now, these are called the Stephen McMahon correspondences. This is fact. These are 7 letters sent between the Commissioner of Egypt, who's Sir Henry McMahon, to the Sharif of Mecca, to say that if you support us and go against the Ottomans, we'll give you an independent Arab state, which includes Palestine. Now, the British went against this, and then 2 years later signed the Balfour Declaration.
Got it. So what you're saying is that this was all preconceived, and this is all playing out as per the British plan. I'm a bit slow today. Sorry, brother, I didn't get your name.
Abid.
So Abid, I didn't get your name. So sorry, I didn't understand. I'm still missing your point though. So you've given that really clear articulation of the history and all the
The point is, we're in this situation because of the British Empire, because of the Zionist supporters like David Lloyd George, who was the Prime Minister at that time, who signed the Balfour Declaration, was a Zionist supporter.
Okay, but here's the thing. Let me ask you this question. And again, I want to thank you for calling. And listeners, if you want to join in the conversation, it's 01582 481822 Friday Night Live. Right now, we're talking to Abid live on the radio. Abid, let me ask you this question, because I'm very much a believer, and I'm sure you are too, of focusing on your realm of control. And whilst it's really important to learn from history and understand the lessons of history, I can't and you can't go back in time and change anything or influence that. But let me just say this, bro. And hear me out for a second. So what I'm saying is, based on everything you said and the fact that we are now looking forward, what do we need to do from your perspective as a Muslim Ummah to influence change, not just in the UK, but in the Palestinian territories? And what I'm trying to say with this conversation around who is a viable voting option in the UK, I don't think there is one at the moment. I don't think there's any Muslim independent candidate that's going to be viable, certainly not in Luton at the moment. There's a few activists here and there that want to put themselves up as independent candidates who have zero credentials. I would vote for Saiful Islam because he's a great guy and he would represent me really well. But I don't see many other people who I can actually vote for. So what do you say we do about that? Because I hear you. You're saying look at the history, but I want to focus on what we can do to positively influence the future, right? And what do you say to that?
Okay, so to influence the future, the first thing is to learn the history, learn the background, learn the policy of this country and how Israel came about. That is what you need to learn first, because everybody gets emotional about Gaza and the deaths in Gaza, which is understandable, but you need to understand the pretext behind this situation.
No, I get that, but respectfully, we need to understand that, and I fully agree with that. But then we need to do something about it, bro.
Exactly. Then the next step is to educate the Ummah and tell them, look, before you start going on the streets and start saying free Gaza, you need to understand the pretext, the context of why this is happening. Then you can go out and then you can defend the people of Palestine intellectually at a higher level.
All right, nicely said. I appreciate your call. 01582 481822. That's Abid calling, giving us his response. Saiful Islam, sir, what say you to that comment there, and the point in general about voting in the UK and there being a viable voting option. And I just don't see Conservatives, Labours, Independents, George Galloway. Hell no. I mean, I'm not going to vote for that guy, and I'm not in his constituency. And a load of people have got him into power. I don't think he's going to last. I think he's going to be kicked out in the next election by Labour once people have come to their senses. Not that I'm saying I'm a Labour voter whatsoever, but what say you?
Well, Brother Abdul Akhtar, I think you've taken the words out of my mouth. I can't disagree with anything you've said. If I just may,
really,
yes,
I'm honoured.
I will, because that's my view too.
I have a barrister in the studio agreeing with me. I've never had that before.
The thing is, in my experience, obviously to study law, I've had to study the legal system, so I know, the functions, if you like, of Parliament and other, departments and so forth. I know that politicians are usually controlled through the media, so you have parliamentary conventions and rules and so forth that is then usually they enforce through the media or the whip, right? And so I'll give you an example of a particular MP, Tony Benn, if you remember. A very good man. He used to try and do the right thing. Because he used to try and do the right thing, he was known as what? A rebel, right? Through the media, everybody knows him as a rebel because he wanted to do the right thing. He was a white Englishman.
And he was a member of the Labour Party.
And he was a member of the Labour Party, right? So now picture a situation where you have a Muslim, independent, not a member of a major party, votes in a certain way. How easy it would be then to label them in a certain way to prevent all of this, right? I cannot see how we can achieve anything good by doing this. So I completely agree with you.
Interesting. 01582 481 822. I want to hear from you listeners right now. Is there a viable option for Muslims right now? If there was an election call tomorrow towards the end of the year, and it is going to happen, we are going to all have to make a decision. Are we voting or not? That's one issue. And if you do decide to vote, then who are you going to vote for? Lots of people saying actually we should be voting for folks, independent. Someone is saying vote for the Workers' Party, vote for the Independence Party. Listen, at the end of the day, what do these parties stand for? If I'm going to vote for someone, that someone needs to have some credentials behind them. They need to have some experience. Would you, for example, imagine you were running a company, listeners, you were running a company, you were the CEO of a company. Who would you want to hire to be your president of sales, your president of technology, your chief legal officer? You're going to want the most talented people in their realm of expertise. Unfortunately, a lot of these independent candidates that I'm seeing standing up have no expertise. They're just good at making noise. They give a good speech on the stage, but they have no credentials whatsoever. That's my worry. Now, to his credit, right, Sir Keir Starmer, again, I'm not a fan of Sir Keir Starmer, but he was the chief prosecutor in the UK. That's credential, right? That qualifies him for the position that he's in. He's earned that position. And a lot of people who are in positions of authority and responsibility have earned those positions. I feel like a lot of independent candidates that I'm seeing crop up by local communities don't necessarily have the credentials. And I've got to say this about Luton, especially because where I live and where we are right now, any independent candidate that wants my vote needs to have a credential beyond being a mere activist. Activists can stand up on a stage and give a good speech and say free Palestine, free Gaza, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we all want that. However, once they're in the job, how well will they execute that job? How well will they execute the office of Member of Parliament? And let me go to Sayyid Rizvi Saab, who's been patiently waiting. Sayyid Rizvi Saab, what's your take on this, sir?
I think Brother Saiful Islam has made some very valid points, and your good self as well. But you said you want expertise. Well, he's been a prosecutor general, but he doesn't know whether there's human rights events taking place in Palestine.
Good point. Great point.
So expertise doesn't make you perfection. Sometimes you need the enthusiasm to make you perfect. You know, the very fact that, events unfold in the world, you're not always a professional in that particular field, but if you have that insight, as we say in Islam, basirat, that enables you a lot more to be able to dictate to the changing consequences than saying, well, I'm a CEO and just take my word for it. So, that issue is not all addressed concern that you have to be a professional. You know, there are people who have not been allowed into the Labour Party because of the fact that they, most of these people who are in the Labour Party, they have no understanding of what the working class or working people are up to. You know, you asked Starmer, you know, I think it was in Nick Ferrari or somebody, he says that define what working class is, and he couldn't define it. Yeah, what kind of Labour Party MP is he when you can't even define what working class is for whom you're standing for? So, you know,
listen, I say so. People can't even define what Islamist is. There's this new term that's come out, which is Islamist, right? Before it was fundamentalist or extremist, and dare I say terrorist. Now they're calling anyone who, I mean, Islamist is a very broad term, but we're all putting our hands up saying we're not Islamists, but nobody knows what the hell an Islamist is, right?
Abdullah Akbar, what is really important to understand that they're using another new vocabulary called culturally Christian or culturally Muslim or culturally Hindu. These are all terminologies to articulate a new environment in which they can say, okay, we're all into it. Yeah, Dawkins called himself a cultural Christian. You know, what is this cultural Christian? It means nothing. What, just because you acknowledge within a culture of behavior that this is acceptable or that is acceptable, then suddenly it becomes culturally acceptable for you? You know, there's a difference. Alhamdulillah, Islam recognizes this. There's a huge difference between culture and deen. A huge difference. You know, you could be culturally something, but if your culture does not complement your deen, then you have to get rid of your culture in reality.
Absolutely. Islam. And it's what Dr. Zakir Naik said, whom I'm a big fan of, but Dr. Zakir Naik always says, don't judge Islam by its people, judge Islam by its text, right? Because people, often we are influenced by culture, right? We're going to have a mixture of culture, and that's okay, because Islam also accepts culture as long as that culture does not violate the fundamentals of our religion, right? We're okay to have culture. We're okay to have that. But say so, carry on. Yeah.
The other important thing is that in Islam, alhamdulillah, we have this opinion that if you are going against your deen, then you have to change, not get the deen to change itself for you. So obviously the interpretations in deen and
you got to try telling the Church of England ministers that, because they themselves admit that they've been changing their religion to suit the times, and that's exactly why Islam came about in the first place. Because since then, unfortunately, the Ahl al-Kitab, the people of the book, have been changing the way they practice and what they believe in. But let's not turn this into a religious lecture. We are a current affairs program.
Coming back to what you were saying about the elections, the main aspirations of the Muslim community should be such that they can put people who can have an impact, if they don't win, but they have an impact on the parties who think that we Muslims are just the vote bank. That's one thing which is essential in this whole exercise.
We're not an easy vote. Is that what you're saying?
We get out of this concept of, oh, don't worry, this is our natural, vote.
Yeah. Oh, connection is frozen there. So we're going to try to get you back on the line. This is where the main issue is. But interesting points there, Saiful Islam Saab, from Sayyid Saab, saying that, often the Muslim vote, especially if you are in the red camp, the Labour camp, has been taken for granted. And I think what a lot of people from this, forming movement in the community are trying to do is say, no, you can't take our vote for granted anymore. And therefore, they want to create a protest vote, if you like, what Sayyid Saab is describing as independent candidates, where they take a significant chunk of that vote. Do you think that has any standing? Is that going to have some runway?
Well, look, my position, as for the message, yes, there may be a message. There may be the political leaders who may say, well, hold on, we need to start doing things differently because this is the consequence. I agree with that. As to anything else that we believe that we will achieve, I'm very skeptical.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. And I think you need to have a party behind you, really, in order to drive change, because the reason why you have a majority in the Commons and therefore you command a majority as a party, as a government, is so that you can create laws that will then drive change. And I just can't see a scenario where, imagine we had in a maybe a best case scenario, 4 independently voted Muslim members of parliament. I'm not sure how much change they will be able to drive in the Commons on their own, unless they were part of a larger cohort of a group of MPs, dare I say, the Labour Party. But again, I'm not advocating voting for the Labour Party. Anyway, listeners, we're going to take a short break. Let me thank Sayyid Razvi Saab for joining us on the program again and sharing his point of views. But this is Friday Night Live. Coming up next, what are we going to do about the Muslim youth in this country? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
They say, oh, poor girl, you're so beautiful, you know. It's a shame that you cover up your beauty so.
فتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت. As Allah says, depend on Allah. Depend on Allah, the one that lives and never dies.
The airport's growth could be huge for Luton. With more than £1 billion in economic growth and up to 11,000 more jobs, it could change the face of the town for the better.
Luton is one of the poorest towns in the UK. We need all the help we can get.
It's really exciting. It'll put us on the map.
This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, so let's not miss out.
Add your voice to the thousands supporting the expansion of London Luton Airport. Visit growourairport.org. That's growourairport.org.
Why do Tops Pizza deliver the top pizzas in Luton and Dunstable?
For a start, all the toppings are 100% halal and Tops use fresh dough every day. Then there's the cheese, the highest quality available. And when it comes to food preparation, cleanliness is taken as part of our faith. So that just leaves the taste, choice, and great offers, including buy one, get one free on all medium, large, and extra large pizzas. Tops Pizzas, Wellington Street, LU1 5AA. Order online, topspizza.com or via Just Eat. Download our app or call 01582 72 5000.
For expert legal advice and support, talk with Luton's leading solicitors, Hannah Solicitors. We specialise in conveyancing, wills and probate, family law, immigration and personal injury, legal matters that matter to you. Our experienced legal team are here to help you through every step of the way. Call 01582 329 069. That's 01582 329 069 or click on hannahsolicitors.co.uk. Hannah Solicitors, professional advice with a tailored approach.
Biscard Pharmacy, your one-stop health and beauty pharmacy in Luton, stockist of over 8,000 health and beauty products. At Biscard Pharmacy, we offer a range of services, including health advice and repeat prescriptions for collection and delivery to your home. We also offer a Hajj and Umrah vaccination. Come in and see us and ask about our Stop Smoking service. We're open 7 days a week till late, including bank holidays. Biscard Pharmacy, 157A Biscard Road, Luton. Call 457709.
The difference between a believer and one who does not believe is that the believer primarily turns to Allah. Before everything, we say Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum. Abu Ayyub reported the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever fasts the month of Ramadan and then follows it with 6 days of fasting in Shawwal, it will be as if he has fasted the entire year. This is narrated in Sahih Muslim. May Allah accept our good deeds, forgive our sins, and make us people of Jannah. Please join Inspire FM from Monday 15th to Saturday 21st for 6 days of the Shawwal fasting broadcast. Join Brother Tariq at 4 a.m. for the Sehri show and Brother Rashid at 7:30 p.m. for the Iftari show.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is I Am Khalid. You are tuned into the Rise and Shine show with Tariq. Keep it locked.
Does your car sound like this on the school run? Want to change that? Then tune into the Rise and Shine show with Brother T. Sing along to awesome nasheeds, answer our puzzling riddles, and tell us what you think of our newest events. The Rise and Shine show, every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7:30.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the fourth and final part of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 19th of April, 2024. I'm your host, Abdul Akbar, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host in the studio, Saiful Islam. He is a barrister and an expert on family law and all the other good stuff that he covers in his legal expertise, and he's been sharing his perspectives. And tonight we have been talking about lots of different topics, namely the Syria, Iran and Israel situation. And I mentioned Syria because that is where Israel attacked initially the Iranian consulate, and then chaos has ensued. Of course, we've seen Iran retaliate a few days ago, and now Israel this morning. I'm sure you woke up to the news seeing that Israel has retaliated in Iran, and let's see, and this saga is to be continued. We talked also about the situation from a number of experts. I do encourage you to listen back to tonight's program. If you do want to do that, you can go onto YouTube and type in Inspire FM Luton and then listen back and watch the program live. We've also just been talking about voting and who is a viable option for the community to vote for in the incumbent elections towards the end of this year, and I'm arguing nobody at the moment. I don't see a viable candidate. I don't see a viable Prime Minister in Keir Starmer. Certainly do not see a viable Prime Minister in the current incumbent, who is Rishi Sunak. So who is going to lead this country out of the misery and chaos that we're all living through right now? The weather's not helping, I've got to say that for sure. What do you reckon? 01582 481822. I've got to say my disappointment of the day today is to hear somebody from an Islamic anti-terrorism think tank deny the fact that the Palestinians are occupied. That was a scary thing to see. You can watch that as well on tonight's program, and he's welcome back on this program anytime to share his perspectives, but know that the truth will always prevail. That's what this presenter is saying right now. Anyway, listeners, I'm going to go on to the next part of tonight's program because we are going to talk about something really near and dear, I'm sure, to your heart and certainly to my heart, which are young people. And they're all around us and they're growing up. And I've got to say, and I said this at the beginning of the program, which was, of course, we've just gone through Ramadan and it's already, we are already kind of in the month of Shawwal, the Islamic month of Shawwal. And I've got to say that time is going very, very quickly. And I've got to say Ramadan also went very, very quickly. However, I was deeply disturbed to see the news when after some Salatul Taraweehs, there were WhatsApp videos circulating on social channels, basically showing young people, I'm talking about people, in their teenage years, fighting each other. And these aren't young people wearing shirts and trousers or jeans as they normally would in their day-to-day. They were wearing thobes and, beautiful attire that we would associate to spirituality and our blessed Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But no, these young people were fighting and they were arguing and they were causing havoc. And I don't want to give this more attention than it deserves because we've got a problem in our community. And the problem in our community is that we like to brush things under the carpet. Oh, Abdul Akbar, don't talk about this. Don't give this more attention than it needs. Oh, but then if you don't talk about it, brothers and sisters, no one's going to do anything about it. And if you can't recognize the fact that we have a problem with the Muslim youth, I'm not just talking about Luton, I'm talking about in Muslim populated areas. I'm not just targeting Muslim youth, by the way. I'm not saying this is a problem only and exclusively with Muslim youth. I think we have a problem with gang violence in lots of areas, notwithstanding Muslim youth is what I'm saying. And because I come from a Muslim background, I follow the Islamic faith, I am concerned about that from my own community perspective, just like a person who belongs to the black community would be concerned about youth and gang violence within the black community, or somebody from the white community being concerned about gang violence and youth problems in that community. And I would say no Muslim is an observant Muslim unless you care about yourselves and your families, but also those around you, wherever they fall, within the fold of Islam or not. They're humans, and what are we doing about it? That's my question. And I'm delighted actually to be joined by a number of people on this particular part of the program. And we're going to be joined again by Sayyid Rizvi Saab. He's back. He's not going away. He loves this program. and he wants to stay. Don't you say it's up?
Yes, I mean, it's interesting. Unless you want me to go.
No, we're just staying. You've got great insights to share, and we're delighted to have you as a panelist. But somebody else we're delighted to have on as a panelist today is Sheldon Thomas, and he is the founder and chief executive of Gangsline. And Sheldon, I'm going to give you an intro you're never going to forget, because he's an inspirational and pioneering individual. And, you know, we would think he has an unprecedented insight into gangs through his own experience as a leading gang member in the 1970s. And now he dedicates his life to engaging directly with gang leaders and members and using a no-holds-barred yet spiritual approach to changing young people's lives. And he's on the radio right now. Sheldon, good evening. Thanks for joining us live on Friday Night Live. And Sheldon, we greatly appreciate your time. And you probably just heard my intro there as well. And let me start off by asking you, obviously as a black man yourself, somebody who's grown up within the culture of you know, Barking and Dagenham, gang-related violence in London, the London borough of Waltham Forest as well, and Redbridge. I'm personally, I used to live in East 17 in Walthamstow and witnessed a bit of that in the 80s as well. I've got to say, I can only speak for Luton. I can't speak for other areas, but I'm seeing young people disenfranchised and basically lost. And, you know, they're coming out with machetes after prayer rituals. What do you make of that? Well, I mean, what's going on from your perspective?
Well, to be honest, when we first came to this country, there wasn't hardly any Asians here, and there was hardly any Africans here. There was mainly black people from the Caribbean only, and Irish people. And as you already know, in every part of England, it had no blacks, no dogs, and no Irish. You couldn't get a place rented. You couldn't get anything done. Everything was all a lie. What they promoted in the West Indies, it was a one big lie. They only wanted to use us as slave labor, under the guise of we're giving you an opportunity to work, when actually what they did.
Are you talking about the Windrush generation, what was known as the Windrush generation?
Yeah, I'm talking about then. And so we came here under the pretense that we was going to go forward in life. But when we came here, we met with hostility. And that hostility meant the first generation of young black kids, that's me, the first generation, grew up resenting our parents for coming here in the first place, and for the fact that our parents were too scared to challenge the systemic racism that they faced. They were brutalized. Then in the 70s, we began to see Africans and Asians come into the country. And what happened was they began to put us in particular areas where we couldn't really thrive. One of those areas they put the Asian community in was called Tower Hamlets. And in Tower Hamlets, they had a vast Bangladeshi community that was Muslim based. In other words, they took the Quran seriously. They were top of the class. They were the brightest. So the ethnic groups that were the brightest in all schools were Asian kids and African kids. The Caribbean kids were trapped because we grew up under colonial rule. So there was this strict, and some of us abandoned our Christian religion because when we came to England, we weren't allowed in any of the churches. So some of us were kind of forced to abandon our religion, and to some degree that kind of damaged us as well. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because you've got to add context, history context, to how Asians have now got into this lifestyle. And so what's happened is, from the top of the class, which is the Asian and African kids, when I say top, that includes higher than white kids. They were so bright. They were just so bright. Then I began to see things begin to fall apart for the Asian and African community. Over the, not straight away, I would say in the late 90s, going to the 2000s, things began to fall apart. And I can tell you what that was. The music infiltrated the Asian and African community. Let me explain when I say music. At that time, Asian and African kids didn't really listen to bashment, reggae music, or hip hop. They didn't really listen because their parents were quite strict. And plus, most of the Asians were practicing Muslims. And most of the Africans were practicing Christians. So it meant that the music, circular, reggae, and hip hop, which is from the African Americans, began to infiltrate those in these particular communities. So then the Asian community had a battle on their hands with the next generation, which is, I think, the third, which is the 2000s, began to rebel against being practicing Muslims and began to take on the assimilation of Black culture, or what they think is Black culture, which is dominated by this negative music that was going on in some areas, not in all parts, because as you know, we had Bob Marley, Bunny Whaley, they didn't sing about violence, they were not like
You
that.
also had the likes of Tupac and Biggie and all those hostile rappers, if you like, in hip hop.
Right. And so
yeah.
they began to infiltrate. And what you found, what I found as a person that was engaging gang members directly, was I realized for the first time when I went into Tower Hamlets, because the mosque down there invited me in to talk to the gang members because they didn't know how to. And what I found was those guys was listening to Tupac, was listening to gangster music, was impressed with that lifestyle, loved the lifestyle, began to embrace the lifestyle, and began to turn away from their religious belief, like what the Caribbean people did to a degree when we came here. So they got infiltrated, and then they assimilated the culture, and to the point where they started to use words that only Black kids would use. Then that spread into the white community, because up until that point, the white community was not really listening to bashment that much. Now we have a music that was now saying to the Asian, the African, and the white community, come, this is the lifestyle. So my thing about Asian community, and I'd say the same to Africans, is that you have to get your kids from a very young age to understand the importance of their religion, because that's what's happened here. The kids you're talking about, I've seen it time and time again. I know it might be surprising to Asian people who go to the mosque. It might be a surprise to them. It isn't. I had to deal with gangs in an area called Bradford. Those gangs are not white. They're not Black. They're all Asian. And
they're mostly Pakistanis.
Pakistani, and they all deal with heroin. So people need to understand, in the Asian community, you are no different to the Black kids. You are no different to the white kids. And just because you go to the mosque, it means nothing, because those kids went to the mosque. And when they came out, I was there. I was with one of the imams. They came out, went to the bando, and got their guns. I was there. So people need to understand. Stop trying to make out like this is a shock. Don't be shocked. Wake up. Stop living in the past. You're not in the past no more.
You're right.
Your kids are not the top of the class. They're at the bottom. Your kids have been excluded from school. Your kids have lost their faith totally. And the kids that are going to the mosque, it's all fake. They're doing it just to put on a show. Because I've gone into the prisons, and they are, I'm going to be honest with you. I am so shocked that these kids have turned out like this. Because when I was young, we never dreamed of no Asian kid being involved in this lifestyle. We didn't dream of an African kid. Now, in London and Manchester and Liverpool, there were more African kids involved than Caribbean kids.
And when you say African, do you mean Nigerian, Somalian?
I mean, yeah, that's the demo. When I say Africa, I'm talking about literally from Africa. They come over when they were like 5 years old, 6 years old.
But you know what, Sheldon? I've got to say, my friend, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, just listening to you was hair-raising, goosebumps, because I think you've analysed that to the T. And there's going to be people listening right now thinking, all right, you know what? Okay, I might have screwed up, and I think the community may have screwed up. But you mentioned a word that you mentioned, the imams. and you mentioned community leaders, and I think it's a big wake-up call for a lot of us in the community, even people like me who are active in the community, people like Saiful Islam here in the studio, who's a prominent barrister in the community. We've got Sayyid Razvi Saab, who's a prominent analyst in the community. We're feeling like we've got to do something about this. Is it too late? Like, what would you say from your experience is a solution? I know that it's got to be multifaceted. There isn't one bullet that can, hit everything. But what would you say is the solution that we need to start thinking about? I'll tell you one thing that has worked for me in the past, and I've done personally with young people members of my own family, is mentoring, i.e. taking people under my wing and really giving them one-on-one or one-to-few time and really speaking to them. But what say you as the expert and somebody who's focused on this for the last few decades? What do we need to do as a Muslim community to guide our youth that may have gone off that path? And you know what? You hit the nail on the head when you talked about music, because one thing that is very prevalent, and I'm telling you, a lot of our listeners, especially who are in their 30s and 40s that have young children, won't know this, but there are prominent so-called Muslim rappers going around on the social media circles in TikTok and on Snapchat, and the lyrics are disgusting. They are dirty lyrics and they're misguided lyrics, and your children could be listening to that. Sorry, Sheldon, back to you.
I mean, what I would say is this, because this is where we failed in the black community. When I came out of this gang life in 1986, obviously my friends got shot dead. 9 of my friends were shot dead over a 10-year period. I myself was shot at several times. And the last time I got shot at, the bullet missed the side of my ears and blew the guy's head off next to me. So that was a wake-up call for me. I think the problem is that when you're dealing with your own race of people, there's a scripture in the Bible that says a prophet's not welcomed in his own city or his own town. And basically, I wasn't welcome because when I turned away from gangs, I went to America to stay at a man called Jesse Jackson. And if you don't know who Jesse Jackson is,
the Reverend Jesse Jackson,
yeah, he used to march with Martin Luther King. So I stayed at his house. And one of the things I learned from him is that he said to me that you've got to use this moment now to go back to the very people in your community and show them how to come out of that lifestyle. The problem I was met with was the adults in my community, because I was still young at the time, ignored and said, we don't have a problem. So what you've got to do within the Asian community is that you've got to convince the imams and the Asian community leaders to understand the severity of not doing anything. Because the severity is this. I go into prisons quite often, and I'm going to be honest with you. There were as much Asian kids in prison who for murder, manslaughter, drug trafficking as their black kids. And if we was the same population size as white kids, blacks would outnumber, Asians would be next, and whites will be last. Obviously, before anyone says anything, we know racism plays a part in why black kids and Asian kids are in prison. We know that. That's not disputed. What is disputed is the lack of male figures in the Asian community taking up the rod and saying, you know what? We do not want what's happening in other communities to happen to ours. So let's not wait for 1 in 3 children to be murderers or drug traffickers or something like that, because the problem is parenting. Secondly, we need to understand that this is what the gang told me in Bedford, when I dealt with that gang
in Bradford.
In Bradford, right? They said to me, they would go home and their dads would be drunk. These are the dads that were going to mosque. So this is what the guy told me. He said to me, my dad's a hypocrite. He would go to the mosque, give it all this 5-time prayer business, and then come out and hit his wife in front of the kids. This is what the guy told me. This is a Pakistani young man. He was aged 17 when I met him, big-time heroin dealer. because what I done, I got all the gang, one particular gang at the bando. I told them to come round. They were quite fascinated because they was wondering why, as a black guy, what am I doing here? So what happened was, the reason why they came was because I didn't do what normal people did. I went to the mosque and got somebody who does outreach from there and help. So, because one of the things I've learned is that we've got too much people in this country trying to go into other ethnic groups and tell them what to do, how to do it. I didn't want to do it because I'm not a Muslim. I'm a Christian. So I can't go in there with some Christian view and expect I'm going to change their life. I
hear you. But you assimilated through an existing member of the community, and you saw that example you gave of that young person not seeing the example from his father figure that he should be getting that example from. It is a strong one, it's a powerful one. But let me go to Saiful Islam in the studio. Saiful Islam, I mean, you've heard a lot there from Sheldon Thomas there, former gang member, and obviously now reforming other people's lives for the better. How much would you say is the responsibility on mosques and imams? Because the mosque really is the pillar of our community, you know, it's somewhere that everyone goes at least every Friday. How important and how vital is the role of the mosque in helping, you know, retrain and welcome the youth into the mosques, if you like?
Well, this is, I have to say, an emotional topic for me, because I've been thinking about this for a long time. And so looking at the topic is, do we have a problem with the youth in Muslim areas? And if so, what's the cause? And then you cited the example of what happened in Ramadan with the youth in between prayers and so forth. In previous Ramadans, I think we've seen videos of adults doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So in my view, it's not just the youths, all right? There is a fundamental problem here. And at the risk of being accused of all sorts, I'm going to say this. I believe the problem lies with the ulama and modern day ulama. And I will explain why.
So when you say ulama, just to translate, you mean scholars?
Modern day
people of knowledge.
That's
People of knowledge.
That's right. I'll explain exactly why. No Muslim would contemplate eating pork while in the masjid. No Muslim would contemplate drinking alcohol while in the masjid, or trading in riba while in the masjid, because they all grew up knowing that it's haram. But every Muslim, or most Muslim, has no hesitation in starting a fight if he gets angry in the masjid, because he does not know that it's haram. My problem is that what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that when two Muslims fight, the one that kills will go to Jahannam, and the one that dies will also go to Jahannam, because if he didn't die, he would have killed the other one. So we know clearly that it is haram. I grew up listening to our ulamas referring to these issues of Muslims fighting and so forth, and they used to use a word, and I believe they still do in Bangla, say farena, which is equivalent to you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't. But actually, you shouldn't goes nowhere near haram. So I believe that people or Muslims need to grow up believing what it is for what it is. And that is, for Muslims to fight, especially with other Muslims, is haram, forbidden. Adults need to practice it, and you will automatically see the changes generations down the line. Until that happens, I don't see, I can't expect changes. But the reason I'm saying this, the reason I'm pointing fingers at the ulama is because I hope they will listen to this, and I hope they will start calling this what it is supposed to be called.
Absolutely. And I think, look, whatever people stand on this, one thing we all agree on is that there's an issue, and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed ASAP before it gets out of control. And I would argue that it is out of control right now. I mean, if you look at the knife culture, knife violence that we're just seeing in London, and most likely in Luton as well, it's very, very disturbing. And I do believe it is the responsibility of community leaders to do something about this, but not just them. It's your responsibility, listeners. It's my responsibility. We can't just be armchair activists. We need to get out there, go to our local mosques, our imams, and say, what are we going to do about this? Not what are you going to do about this, but what can we do about this? And then contribute our skills and our knowledge and our expertise and our manpower and woman power in order to resolve this. I'm going to leave the last words with Said Saab. Said Saab, let me get your perspectives in 30 seconds, please.
30 seconds. I think it's a lot of problems in the institutional structures. as Brother Saiful Islam said, that you look at the imams, and a lot of the imams are imports. They don't speak English in any means whatsoever to communicate with the youngsters. You may experience it yourself. I have.
And that's changing slowly. I would argue it's changing in some places, but not all places.
Indeed, I appreciate that. But I've got areas in our community where the Maulana wakes up, talks to his wife in Urdu or Punjabi, goes to the shop, talks to them in Urdu and Punjabi, comes to the mosque Urdu and Punjabi, and goes home Urdu and Punjabi. He's not communicated there for the last 20 years to learn English as it would be appropriate for the communal use. That's one thing.
Absolutely. Well, let's leave it there on that point, because really strong points. I want to go ahead and thank all my guests on this program tonight. Of course, Sheldon Thomas for sharing your perspectives, and also, of course, Sayyid Taki Razvi, and also my special co-host, Barrister Saiful Islam. Listeners, this was Friday Night Live. Until next week, see you then. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.